We've been talking about it for a while. I think we did do some sessions on systemic approach even before we started the spirituality theme almost about 6 months ago. And one of the reasons I'm coming back here is one, because this is probably, I think, the single most important shift that is going to happen in the industry. I think more and more companies are realizing, and I'm being very blunt here, and it might be hurting some people, that individual coaching is really not as value added as it is thought to be. When you coach individuals and they go back to their workplace, however transformatory their experiences have been, today there's enough evidence to show, not just my personal evidence, but there is enough evidence globally with coaches to show and corporations to show that either the individuals regress or they resign because the rest of the system do not accept their mind shift changes. And I'm finding it in people that I coach, and of course, I make a lot of effort to try and see, in some ways, get their teams involved in some way, even if the company doesn't pay for it fully, and so on and so forth. And this, I'm sure every single coach has experienced that. They may not want to admit it, but this is an absolute truth. My own experience, and I think I shared it before, was when I first started this kind of an approach some years ago, 5 years ago, when I didn't know anything about the word systemic coaching. There's a bunch of 10 guys in one of the biggest companies in the world where I was coaching them individually, and there wasn't much progress happening in some teamwork that they were doing outside of the coaching arena. And the sponsor, who was a good friend of mine, said, can you do something? And so I started just 2 sessions with them as a team. And it was later the sponsor said it was a miraculous shift. There was an alignment and they were able to get together. They understood where they had to collaborate and so on and so forth. And that is when I started learning more about systemic coaching, eventually came across gurus in that, David Clutterberg, Peter Hawkins, and other people. So this is something which I believe is extremely important. And now systemic coaching goes by various names. Some people call it team coaching. Some people wrongly call it group coaching. We'll look at the differences later. And later I will go through what Peter Hawkins says about this in terms of differentiating various types of what may be called by different names as systemic coaching or team coaching. The second also is that, like Magda said, I'm starting this program, which I think was about time that we moved away from pure core competency approach of ICF in training people to ACTP and so on, but also integrate a lot of other stuff, out of which systemic coaching would be one, supervision would be another, team coaching, all that stuff over and above whatever we already do in East-West integration, OD, and so on. So it's going to be, as she said, it's a program where I would allow people to come in at various points in time. I'm not going to treat that space as a sacrosanct kind of sanctuary for a group of people who want to get together. That's not going to be the approach. It's going to be a sandbox for people to play and experiment. And those who are willing to do that, who are wanting to take that venture, they can join. And I don't think it's going to be for those who are looking for tremendous amount of structure and what I would perhaps in my own direct language call the weak-hearted. So that these are the 2 reasons why we thought we would launch this webinar series at this point in time. And one of the things that we are hoping to do, I cannot promise that because it depends on several other people. I'm hoping to invite some of the gurus in these fields to come and speak to us. And we are also simultaneously working with them to start partnership webinars with us, which will be paid webinars for about 30 hours each. And in principle, many of them have agreed, some of the biggest names in the business. And hopefully by late this year or next year, we would be able to announce, Magda and I are talking to these people, and we hope we'll be able to do that. So let me start with something very basic. When we talk about a system, there's often a confusion about what the system is about. Is that system just about my immediate environment? Is it about a larger global system? Is it about something larger than that, an ecosystem? And how these are connected with coaching in any sense of the term. So I just want to trace, in a sense, the whole evolution in a way. In the beginning, whether it was humans or even before humans, non-human living beings, nature was supreme. Everybody else was, in a sense, controlled by the whims of nature. And if you go to the earliest scripts of Vedas, it's all about invocations for people to seek the blessings or to fear and greed from the gods they worshipped, who were all about nature, the wind, the rain, even the thunder, the fire, and so on and so forth. And that is true of all religions. Over a period of time, things have changed, and today, nature is at the mercy of human beings. I'm not quite sure whether it's a good thing, because we seem to be able to control pretty much everything, except when nature wants to prove itself, its power, with disastrous consequences. We are pretty much raping the earth, damaging the climate, multiple other things. So the roles have been reversed in a way. Nature was supreme, and today, the human being, the individual, they seem to think, and we know some global leaders who think even more than that, that they are supreme, they control the system and the nature. I don't think either works. There's a midway path. And if you, again, go down into tracing the evolution of these happening, from the beginning, there have always been hierarchical societies, be it in tribes, be it in armies, be it in the church, and so on. And somewhere along the line, that also started changing. The Industrial Revolution changed it to some extent. And after that, Ford with his mass manufacturing, in a sense, made humans secondary to machines. That changed even more with the advent of transistors and chips and so on and so forth in a different way. It was more the technology and machines in a different way. And today, everybody is afraid that artificial intelligence is going to take over. In fact, I just received an invitation from one of the global bodies in coaching about David Clutterberg going to deliver a lecture on, is AI going to replace coaching? This is a subject which is very popular these days. Where do we need coaches? Then probably robots can do the job actually better, even from the emotional point of view. I heard a guy called, I don't remember his name, he's a chief coach of Google, David something. He comes and speaks on, is coaching dead? And one of the things he says is, with autistic children, it has been proven that they interact far better with robots than human beings. And his tagline is, most of us are autistic in some way or another. And so we would probably do better with machines and artificial intelligence than with human beings as robots, of course. That is David Peterson, Ujjwal has written correct. I've heard him a few times. I've interacted with him in a couple of other sessions. Now, we may be very unhappy with that, but there is a strong element of truth in it. And now we are into another age, which we might call as a knowledge age, or I think it is Professor David Hawkins or someone who calls it as the age of consciousness. And he has a measure that he says that awareness has shifted and it has broken through for the first time in human history. I don't remember the exact number, 300 or something, he says, somewhere during the 1970s. And from there is no going back. Awareness will only increase. But for many of us who are experiencing what is happening in this world, that doesn't seem to be quite the way. When Otto Scharmer talks about it in theory U, he talks about this concept of absencing, where he says most leaders today in the world are in denial completely of the problems that are facing us, be it refugees, be it religious intolerance, be it climate change. The first immediate response is, oh, it doesn't exist, till it is proven to the extreme of it does exist, and then say, oh, no, 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 this is not my baby. I'm not responsible for it, till they are able to move into a state of trying to address that. So we can go on and go on in this. The point that I'm trying to really bring about is, I would like you to think about it, not immediately react, respond to what I'm saying. What is our relationship with what we call a system? What is that system that is important to us? And what are the different layers? Like LinkedIn talks about the 6 points of contact. Similarly, if you were to establish that there are 6 layers of contact, perhaps, for us and the rest of the world. And to start with, what I told Magda is, and I'm going to ask you a series of questions. And I would like you to put the responses in the chat box. And based on that, we will take the conversation forward, because I do not want to end up speaking just to one person here. And maybe some of you will promote to the panel, but at this point in time, I'll really be starting the discussion with this. The first question is, how do you view tomorrow's world, what Scharmer so beautifully calls emerging future? What do you see happening? Just answer that question. What is it that you see that is likely to happen in the emerging future? It could be about yourself, how you see it happening, if you want to be so localized. But more than that, in some ways that it relates to you, how do you see the emerging future around you? So I would like to have your answers to it on the chat box. I'll wait for Magda to, in her unique way, put all this together, integrate, and give me back something so I can talk a little more.
Wasn't there where you were waiting for me on that one? But you would look at this particular one. All right, so let's take a look at what people are saying. Oh my goodness, lots of responses going in quickly. Rapid changes, higher levels of consciousness. Every day is a new paradigm. Rising groupism for nations and increasing isolation for individuals. Oof. Fragmented, each trying to establish their own identity. World of chaos and decreased morality. Oof. Some people aren't seeing a very bright future, unfortunately. More vacillation between doom and hope. Convergence through diversities, world of choices and consequences. Very automated, less personal interaction. Exponential change, superhumans. Becoming overly reliant on technology, having too short term of a vision, disconnect with nature, materialistic. Increase in fundamentalism. Okay. This is a little scary, if I'm going to be honest.
No, good. Magda, this is fantastic, because what we should do is really capture this chat box and
oh yes, we will.
We would work on that in terms of far more expanded documentation. Yeah, there is a variety of opinions. That's fantastic. That's the way it should be. like one of the few things that I looked at was someone like Rukmini is very hopeful. I'm extremely hopeful about the future. But at the same time, I also realize that any new creation is going to mean destruction. And therefore, there is also going to be a tremendous amount of destruction. In what way it is going to happen, who it is going to affect, we don't know that. In fact, I was discussing with Magda I don't know, a couple of months ago, actually. I was explaining to her the whole concept of what is called the Dasavatar in the Hindu evolution concept, the 10 incarnations of Vishnu, the god of sustenance, where there's only last one left standing, as it were, and not yet appeared. And that avatar is known as the Kalki avatar, and normally described as a warrior on a horse. I mean, I've gone through the scriptures concerning that, and there's no evidence to what that means. I told her, in my intuitive sense, it's a woman who is going to change the way this world is going to work. And it's a very, very controversial and somewhat painful subject to most of us men. But I don't think really the world requires men. It really requires a bit of semen to continue procreation, but it really requires women still to be the containers. And you see that happening, whether you like it or not, with animals. Most of them are artificially inseminated. You just have a few studs which are used for extraction. It may be crude to you, but that's reality. So ultimately, my belief is, and you may agree with me, disagree with me, it doesn't matter really. I may not be correct at all. But what's going to win is feminism in some way. It's not about women. It's about something much stronger, which is a whole concept in the Hindu philosophy of Shiva and Shakti. They are one. The Ardhanarishwara concept, where Shiva is the passive potential energy who seemingly does nothing, but he is a source in some ways. And the active one who makes things happen is Shakti. She is a kinetic energy. Perhaps the world is going to shift in that way. But leaving that aside, my sidetracking apart, now that each of you has visualized this emerging future in your own way, the way that you think it'll happen, perhaps unconsciously, hoping that is what would happen, unless you are acting out of fear, but most people prefer to act out of greed or desire. What I would like now for you to answer is, how would you as an individual hope to cope with this emerging future for you to survive and grow? I would like your opinions on this. Whatever you can think of, reflect and put down your answers, and Magda can read that out to me, and then we can move further.
So far, we only had a few answers, and they are essentially awareness, self-awareness, learning and change, more self-awareness, spiritual practice, accepting the reality, staying authentic, have clear values, become more centered, but more about self-awareness and becoming connected, being connected with yourself, being agile and keep updating, keep developing, self-discipline, be open and honest, be engaged with others, draw strength from the inside, more self-awareness, connecting with nature, being adaptable and versatile, being agile, going with the flow. A few more comments on staying centered and true to your values, empathy and cooperation, more self-awareness, more adapting, learning, being a lifelong learner, more self-awareness, emotional stability, moderation. I like that one, me personally. Adaptability, learning, embracing the emerging reality, continued learning, connection to nature. That's some strong themes.
Okay. Okay. Let us take this one step further. We looked at the emerging future, and there were many things happening out there, some of them frightening, some of them hopeful. And many of you are looking at things like, yeah, I need to be more aware. I need to be more agile. I need to be able to accept the change, all that kind of stuff. Fair enough. Many of them are actually probably reactive and responsive stances, perhaps not proactive stances. But in the process of all this happening, as a typical coach, if I were to explore the aspect of what we in mentoring and assessing look for as the 2.4 competency, what is it that you may need to resolve? Now you've agreed on what is you want to cope with. That is more like a session outcome or a dream outcome or whatever it is. And let's for a moment leave the measures of success and so on from a coaching standpoint differently, and even the importance. But if you were to look at what is it that you would see coming in the way of being able to cope the way that you want to, in the ways that you described, be it self-awareness, be it moderation, be it acceptance, it's whatever it is. Yeah, like Magda has put it, what's going to be standing in your way? What is going to block you? Again, if you could put it down.
There's some great answers coming in, but my favorite so far is immunity to change. Lots of people are immune to change, huh? Wait, what's in your way? Being proactive, open communication, building trust and belief. I wonder if that's building trust and belief in yourself, or unconscious behaviors and patterns. We all have that. Our own mindset and rigidity to change, knowledge, my own limiting beliefs, inhibition and fear, preconceived notions, distrust, insecurity, existing paradigms, so status quo.
Magda, I see an interesting
ego.
word there.
Yeah.
Indra has put in a word called negative ego.
Negative ego. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, Indra, if you can just add a sentence to it. What is it that you mean by somebody else put down ego? I can understand that. What is the negative ego you are talking about?
Yeah, as we wait for that, trust is coming up, my belief system, unconscious behaviors, inability to keep pace. I think it means keep pace with the fast pace of the change. Okay, so Indra replied, negative ego is internal to us and is in the mind.
And how is it different from positive ego? Positive ego is also your mind.
Let me know if I should promote Indra to the panel. But in the meantime, there's social pressure that's coming up for people.
Okay, fine. It's when we don't have control of ego. Fair enough. It's interesting. The reason why I asked is, and again, I'm going back to some of the stuff that I know. In the Vedic system of psychology, ego is defined in two ways. The words used in Sanskrit are called hamkara and mamakara. One refers to how we perceive ourselves and the arrogance, the bloated, etc., whatever we feel inside. And the other is about how we would like others to perceive us. And there's a huge difference in this. Typically, if you see very insecure people, they are the biggest bullies, and they want to show themselves as extremely powerful. So their interior view is very small, whereas to compensate for that in the exterior, they would like to appear big. So that is one of the differences. So I really wanted to check with you what it is. So what you're saying is, yeah, negative ego is not what we really are. We are trying to project. Quite true. That is something very similar. And this is a concept which in a way ties up with the archetypes and the collective unconsciousness and all of that Jung talked about as well. Okay, now that you have talked about these three things, what is the emerging future? What is it that you would need to cope with in terms of that you would need to react, respond to, and what is it that will block you? And I don't want your answer to it at the moment, but yeah, ahamkara is something like the way that we want others to perceive us. There are different ways of how we can talk about. I don't know which one. Ahamkara, I think, is what you would like to think about yourself. Mamakara is the way you want others to talk about it. But my Sanskrit is not that good. One of them means interior, and the other is the external. It's like a Johari's window, the way that you look at it. Now, what I would like you to reflect for yourself, and probably we'll take it up in another session in future, is as a coach, what do you think is the value that you can add in this process? All of us fully believing that we are more aware than the next person, and we sit in the coach's chair. We are the people who have perhaps all the answers, and we are able to create the awareness in the other person and all that stuff. And therefore, as somewhat superior human beings in a sense, Magda, pardon me, you are yet to be a coach, but I think we are in the company of people perhaps who are...
it's okay, no one's perfect.
No one is perfect. So no, but we are now talking about perfect people. So what is it that you think that you can add as value to creating this new world? Let's just look at the positive aspects of it. And in order to cope with whatever is happening, and we see the blocks as these, and those blocks are going to be faced by other people. What is it that we can do? If we look at it from that perspective, and I don't want your answers at this point in time, is in a way, you are moving beyond your personal self into a larger self around you, and then linking it with the larger system as to what changes need to be managed and what need to be coped with. Before I move into a little more descriptive part about what people like Peter Hawkins say about what systemic coaching and what are the different levels, probably. There are a couple of things that I just one more thing that I want to ask you. I talked about earlier what David Peterson said, and even some other people have said. David Kloreberg is going to run a symposium on that. What is it that we as human beings, you believe, can do better, and therefore we are going to be relevant in an age which is going to be run pretty much by robotics and AI? Think about it very rationally, not just because we have to survive and we feel whatever needs to happen has to happen, but what is it we bring to the table that would make the difference in our being superior?
So the kinds of things that are coming up are love and compassion, kindness, value of other human beings, emotional intelligence. We are the only ones gifted with awareness and able to play the real part in the evolution. Now, I don't know about the awareness part. We can discuss this some other time. I have some views on that one. Empathy, connection, acceptance, empathy, warmth over competence, connection, curiosity. That's a good one, curiosity. Using our intuition to guide us rather than just data. Empathy, emotional empathy. EQ, emotional intelligence, seems to be a big theme. Being able to connect with others. Courage.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Let's put all this together. And I really, many of these questions are more for your self-reflection. And later we will go through this and probably put it together in terms of responses from different people. But there's something that I read in between quickly. Harish has said, it's a connecting the dots. Actually, that is exactly the word Peter Hawkins uses when he's talking about the larger aspect of systemic coaching. He says that one thing, how good the computers are, how good the robotics are, to connect the dots, as it were, in relationships, especially with empathy, and somebody used the word curiosity and all these kind of emotions, which the human beings have developed over God knows how many millions of years, and they are going to be perhaps more difficult. They are not the cognitive, they are highly emotive, highly driven by certain hormones inside our body. And one of the things that he says about this is the connecting the dots also means that we need to let go many of our limiting beliefs about the separation between various things, and specifically he addresses it in coaching. He says, one person would say that I am an OD expert. I'm very proud I'm an OD expert. I'm an NLP expert. I'm an AI expert. I'm a coach. The other person is just a counselor. Somebody else is a consultant. Somebody else is a therapist. We are all working in probably the same space of the human mind in one way or another. And then we make these somewhat meaningless differences. Okay, it may be okay for an assessment, the way that ICF establishes the competency models. But that's not really true. And for someone like Peter Hawkins to point out that it's only when that leadership starts differentiating between all this and puts them all together in a bucket of human development, human relationship development, or leadership development, wherever these inputs are coming from, in whichever manner of process or practice or intervention, are we able to accept them all? And are we able to put them together without being biased about one or the other? And one of the things that he talks about is therefore connecting the dots. So I'll just leave it here for your thoughts. Yeah, collective consciousness in one sense, but collective consciousness in the sense of accepting diversity, accepting that people can have different opinions, that I am not better because I can control. That age is past. The age of where the hierarchy was able to control and influence people is no longer relevant. It is, I'm very sure that in the next few decades, it'll be somewhat more akin to the John Lennon's world of Imagine, where the barriers would drop. I'm hoping that would happen over a period of time, and which I refer to as a feminine energy rather than the masculine energy of trying to preserve that space, separate, whereas a feminine energy integrates. There's a huge difference. This is my personal point of view. Now let me go into what Hawkins describes as 4 levels of, and later we will send you, Magda will send you this particular talk of Peter Hawkins. that he made in an ICF conference some time ago. And I'm picking up bits and pieces from there and trying to integrate it with some other great masters as well, Peter Senge, Otto Scharmer, and so on. He talks about 4 levels and starts with team coaching when people are looking at the team as a collection of individuals. And here I want to ask a question. There are some statements and questions out there. I'm very sorry, we may not have the time to be able to answer them, but what I certainly promise you is we will go through all that and try to, if there are questions that require some answers, comments, whatever it is, we will provide that. What I want you to answer now, very, very simply, and it's a very, very simple question. How do you differentiate between team and group coaching? Very often we use these terms interchangeably, but they cannot be interchanged. What do you think is the difference between team and group coaching?
Okay, so far we're seeing that a team is more cohesive. They're working towards a common goal. A team is work focused. A group is identity based. Team is a team of colleagues who work together daily. A group has individual objectives. Team coaching should have a common objective. Common purpose of existence, but which one is that? Group coaching is coaching individuals in a group setting. Team works towards a goal. Group is disparate.
It's very interesting. Group coaching is coaching group of people in a group setting, and team coaching is coaching a team in a team setting. Doesn't enlighten me too much anyway, but that doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah, group coaching is a group of people versus team has a common purpose seem to be the two prevailing opinions.
Yeah. The simple way of answering that is, I would like those of you who are interested further in this to go to Google and find out about what is called the Project Aristotle. And there's a book which is written about it, doesn't expressly say it's about it, but Culture Code, it's a very good book. Google did a huge survey within its operations, and I think it also involves some other operations, and put down five parameters. And there's a very famous book by David Lencioni called, what is it called? Five Dysfunctions of a Team. The Google study, in a way, looked at the positive side of it rather than the dysfunctions. What are the functions of a good team? There's a lot of coherence and congruence between these two. There were 2 of them which were behavioral, and 3 of them are pretty much many of you are saying. One, that there has to be a common goal, and that common goal should be a meta goal. That is not purely about finances and so on and so forth, profit, performance, and all that stuff, but something larger systemic. That it is something what people today call as a double bottom line. Is there a societal value to it? There is an environmental value to it. There's something of that sort. And then following that, the goal has to be conveyed with great amount of clarity, transparency, and also the structure of the entire institution has to be set up in such a way that it recognizes. Many companies talk about, oh, we believe in teams, but actually the way they reward people, and those of you who are HR and L&D managers in this particular group would probably know how hypocritical organizations are, when the reward would be for stars, and if the team consists of dogs, then the dogs will go hungry. And the 2 behavioral concepts that Google identified, the most important they called as psychological safety, that people should have, without fear, be able to express their opinions without being put down, without being criticized, etc., etc. And as a result of which, there is a dependability that grows within. And that is what really makes a team. But when we normally refer to team coaching, most people talk about it as the group coaching. The team consists of a bunch of individuals, and the focus is on how they relate to each other, what happens between the individuals, and what they want from each other and from the team. So it's about really establishing some kind of harmony, some kind of a relationship and all that. And the second level is what Peter Hawkins says is the real team coaching. He calls this the system team coaching. So if you have 10 people in a team, the team becomes 11th entity. It's unseen gorilla in the room, as it were. So the team is more than the sum of its parts. It's much larger in many ways. If the synergy is good, then the 2 plus 2 can be 22. It doesn't have to be 4, something like that. And it's all about how do we dialogue with each other? How do we break down the silos? How do we collaborate with each other? And so on and so forth. There's a lot of other dynamics that come into it rather than just merely the individual dynamics. So it is a little more complicated for a coach or a facilitator to handle that. And which is why I think many coaches have some amount of anxiety or even fear and resistance to getting into teamwork in a sincere, serious way. Not just as a facilitator of a group, which any trainer can do, but the serious work that you can do, which almost means that you will have to detect energy shifts that are happening in the room as you work with people, which are displayed in various emotions. Because any group that I have worked with, if there are 15 people, there would at least 2 or 3 who do not align with the group. And how to handle them when they are still in the group. And some of them may be senior people. How do you do that? How do you do it without offending them? At the same time, not offending the people. It requires walking a very, very tight rope. These are some of the things that we can discuss and see. If you have real life examples, we can work together with that. So most of the team coaching work that many companies do is really in this space, building a team, as it were. And there are various outward bound and all that kind of a stuff which gets done, which doesn't work really after the first week of having gone through it. But it really requires a neural network change. How do you build that? And how do you make the team dynamics work and all that? So that is really what Hawkins talks about as how to work with a team as a system. The third level is different. It is not team as a system. It is not system team coaching, but it's systemic team coaching. There's a very fine and very distinct difference. What it means is that the team derives strength as well as provides strength for all the stakeholders involved, not just the members of the team, not just the team, but whoever else they are interacting with, the rest of the institution. It is in a way looking at which way the organization should develop in the future. And in order, those of you who have worked with Coacharya, we work on a process called 65 back. We would like you to imagine or visualize, not imagine actually, think about your life when you are 20, 25 years from now, when you break out of the prisons of your time and space boundaries, and then you come back to today. It's something like that. The same thing that we just, in a very, very brief manner, superficial manner, we did. What is the emerging future that you're looking at? And coming back today, what is it that you need to prepare yourself to do with that? And it's also a bit of what Peter Hawkins calls outside in. It's not merely inside out, where you're working with a team. The team talks about what is it that I can do as a group together for the outside. Here we are bringing in a lot of what is happening outside, and are we able to put that together? So it requires the team dynamics as well as a much larger overview of what is happening with the system. So there is a systemic integration. I know these subjects are not that immediately clear at that point in time. We will take it up further and discuss it in much greater detail. The last one Hawkins talks about is what he calls the ecosystemic coaching, which is absolutely, to my mind, is totally brilliant. And he's not talking about the environment. So if you're talking about first level, the teams, we are looking at the individuals, their relationships, or you work with the team and try and make the individuals relate together. Then you have the system team coaching, where you look at the team as a whole, that's an additional member, and how would that team move together as one entity, almost like a SEAL team or a commando team or whatever that you might have. And that objective of that team in system team coaching may not necessarily be one of a much larger goal of the organization. Each one might have their interpreted ones. The third one is a little broader or much broader, where the team is seen as an entity of the system, systemic. And so the systemic inputs are provided within that reflect on what the team wants to do. And within the team, then the team develops things about, invariably you will find when you're looking at what the system wants, there would be a certain timeline for it. Whereas the individuals might be looking at what I need to do tomorrow. Whereas the system might look at what would like to happen to the system maybe 3 months hence, 1 year hence, or even 3 years hence. So there is a difference in terms of time space boundaries as well. But when you get into the ecosystemic change or systemic coaching, what Peter Hawkins talks about is, at the same time, there are multiple teams which are working. So it's not just one team. So the organization spawns a number of similar teams together. And not only there is simultaneous, it's like, I don't know, if you've been in one of these Disneyland kind of stuff, and you're sitting inside like a teacup kind of a thing, which is rotating, and you're sitting in chairs there, and then the whole thing is also rotating like a satellite. It's crazy, it drives you mad. And that's really what happens here. You have the individuals within the team trying to interact, and then the teams are trying to define themselves, and then the teams are interacting with other teams in the organization. But unless this happens in a very powerful way, there is no way that big cultural changes are going to happen in the company. Cultural changes don't happen because one person changes or one team changes. Cultural changes happen when that entire movement starts happening within an organization. It's one can use this word, the team of teams, as it were, where the boundaries collapse, the silos collapse. And that is why I use this word, John Lynn's Imagine. And there are no barriers. There are no castes, there are no groups, there are no colors, there are no races, there are no religions. It's ideal, but yes, unless an organization is able to do it to some extent, that organization is going to, at some point in time, disintegrate and die. So, which, like one of you has put it here, neural network change. Yes, it starts with the individual neural network change, but we are looking at something much larger, much more large systemic thing. It's a collective conscious network change. I don't know what that even means. I have no idea. But really, that needs to happen across the organization. And we know now that it can happen. Behavioral changes there's this famous experiment called the 100-monkey principle that was conducted in an island of Japan, where some monkeys in the mainland were taught certain new habits, and suddenly they found a colony of about 100 or 200 monkeys outside an island picked them up, not knowing how it happened. And that does happen. So for multinationals, it can even happen. Something that happens in one country like India can spread. To be honest, today, I don't know whether Amrita is not here, and she shared with me something in Adobe where the whole concept of check-in system that they had, which threw away the whole review system that they had built over years and spending literally hundreds of $millions, happened when the chief of HR, she visited India, and somebody raised the question, what is this nonsense? You are trying to force fit people into this idiotic parabolic curve or whatever it is. And the concept was taken and it changed the entire Adobe world and is now reaching beyond. So there I would see this as some kind of an ecosystemic change. Can we name that differently? I don't know, you can name it anything that you want, it doesn't matter. But the point is, you are moving from team as individuals to team as a team, then the team as a system, larger system, the team as part of a larger system as a systemic approach, and finally, an ecosystemic approach. So I'll take a breather here if you have any questions before maybe in the next session we will handle something else. But there's a very powerful link between this and the learning fifth discipline systems that Peter Senge talked about, where he talks about the mental models of the individuals, which are the ones which bind us unconsciously. I would call it mostly unconscious incompetency. Then he says you move to the personal mastery, which is unconscious competency. It's a beautiful shift that happens when you're prepared to be open, when you're prepared to learn. And then you imbibe that within the team, the people that work. And from there, it becomes a shared vision. And it becomes the largest element of system. And that is how the 5 concepts of Peter Senge come together as well. It's not very different. It's all coming together in a beautiful way. Different people can interpret it differently, but you can find that difference happening. Yeah, if there are any questions, please. Magda, if you can just check.
Yeah, actually, if you want to hop in and look quickly, something tells me that we should maybe save these for next time. So yeah, please review them. But for everyone who's listening in, this is a series, right? So if there's any questions that come up for you that we don't address today, just please email me and we'll make sure that we get to them also in subsequent
Okay, I'll quickly answer 2 questions, Magda.
Great.
One is, in the second and third stage where team is an entity and system, who exactly will you coach? In all cases, actually, you're going to coach the individuals because the team is not a real entity. But when you look at them, you try to bring together what is the commonality. So that is really the difference. In one case, you are just coaching them as individuals in the first level of team coaching. The second level, you are coaching them as a bunch of individuals who are coming together with a common goal. So you're constantly trying to integrate them together. And the third one, you are going even beyond that into that larger entity, which is where Shankar is asking, can boundaryless be achieved in an organization which itself has a boundary? Absolutely. I think it's a mindset, whether it is for you or whether it's for someone else. I know, Shankar, that you have tremendous faith in the same master that I have, Ramana, and you have studied a lot about this. You can create a boundaryless within you. Why can't you create a boundaryless in the organization? Of course you can. Time, space, these boundaries are very relative, and we can completely go beyond that. We can talk about it in much greater depth. Ram, these circles, levels are very rational, chaos, self-organized with good coaches. I guess so. I like the word could coaches coach chaos, because let's look at it this way, Paul. To many people, the way that the entire galaxies work seem to be totally chaotic. We don't even know what's happening. Constantly, it's expanding. There are millions and millions and millions of solar systems, star systems, which have millions of planets, billions of planets, which are revolving by themselves, revolving around somebody else. It's a total goddamn chaos. But in spite of it, there is total order. So in a sense, there's actually a beautiful Zen concept, which is about how do you create order within chaos? And how do you deliberately create chaos in an order so that there is a different perspective? I mean, we can go deeper into this at this point in time. This is where I would like to leave it. But yes, the answer to your question is, of course, you can coach chaos. If you have experienced chaos yourself, which I'm sure you have, and every one of us has, and how did you manage the chaos? How did you bring order and reverse? Can you make people deliberately go through chaos? Magda can answer that because I put her through, along with some other people in a program, Create Your Future, into chaos. And I put them, each one of them, through fear of the elements, and they came out of it unscathed. So yes, you can do it. Would you say that systemic coaching provokes more resistance because it would mean we learn to look at the whole rather than ourselves? Yes, sure. Because our natural tendency is only to look at ourselves. We are selfish. We are human. All humans are selfish. But when you move from the smallest to the biggest, that's a huge shift. Hawkins calls it beautifully. When I was talking to him, I went and visited him at Bath. He said, I would like things to move from IQ moved into EQ. Now I would like the IQ to move into VQ. The I, the individual quotient, to move into the we, the collective quotient. If that happens, then there is the whole system's viewpoint. I think it was absolutely brilliant. And I hope to bring him in as a partner as well as into this space as one day.